Well, 5 games to go, and it's not getting any less tense, is it? Particularly if you're a fan of one of those sides at the bottom like I am in Luton Town. We are back today for Matchweek 42 predictions in EFL Championship. And my word, there are some big games coming up between Friday and Monday this weekend before we head into a busy Easter period. If you want to get involved as we're going to preview and predict all 12 matches and the scorelines, then please do get in the comments and let us know what you think the scores are going to be. If you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out next midweek when we look ahead to the Good Friday fixture list. We should be back on Wednesday for that one. For now though, before we go and look ahead to match week 42, I'm afraid from my point of view, we need to have a look back at midweek where after a very consistent and good run for me in the championship predictions, I've had a stinker. Just 4 points overall. I lost 5 points in stoppage time across the 2 nights, particularly the perfect score for Bristol City West Brom, which went very wrong late on and enabled most of you to overtake me. I got my 4 points for wins for Coventry, Swansea and Leeds United, and also a point for the draw between Blackburn and Sheffield Wednesday. For many of you, it was also a low scoring week. Nobody got more than 10 and only one person in double figures at all. Not the free scoring that we saw at the weekend. So level with me on 4 points were Nigel, Mick, John and Etienne. One above us on 5, Chris and Mello. Marco is there on 6 in a world of his own in the middle. Before 2 people on 8, Steve, last week's match winner, and Bobby. 3 people in joint second on 9, Akshay, Ojo and Brian. And in the match week winner, back in form after a long barren spell not featuring on this table much, is Teo, one of our regular players on 10. You are the match week 41 winner. And well done to you, because that was a tough set of fixtures to predict. And I need to learn my lesson from the last couple of match days. Go lower scoring. Let's move on to match week 42 and try and apply that logic, which, to be honest, I've not really done. As we go on to Friday night, it's a huge game at the top of the table. Burnley versus Norwich City. And Burnley went back to the frustration in midweek. After nicking some wins, keeping those clean sheets, it was a 0-0. Another blank drawn at Derby County. Not a great result for me as a Luton fan. And again, Burnley had bundles of the ball, created next to nothing. 2 shots on target all game. You could argue Derby had the best chance of the match. And in the end, we talk about the creative players that came in January that can make a difference to prevent this situation again. Equally, some of the exciting players that were available at Burnley's disposal weren't used off the bench. And Scott Parker has just gone a little bit too cautious again, and that might be what cost them at the end, unless Sheffield United keeps slipping up. But if you take away the points deductions, the top 3 would all be level on 85 points now. It's impossible to call. And Burnley come up against a Norwich side who had a very rare 0-0 in midweek. They drew with Sunderland, which wasn't the worst result on paper, but probably is enough now to put them out of the playoff race, 9 behind with 5 games to go. They just about edged the game in terms of chances and in terms of good chances, but in the end, they didn't have that cutting edge, which is not often the thing we say about Norwich, but the fact they kept a clean sheet will more than make up for that for them. That's 2 in the last 3 matches, though both at home, and on the road, we know they've been pretty wretched for many a year. I think this is going to be a home victory. I'm not sure how many goals there's going to be. Because Norwich's defence isn't the best on the road, they're letting 2 at Plymouth, they're letting 2 at Bristol City. I'm going to go for Burnley to get 2, keep their customary clean sheet and go for a 2-0 Burnley win. But he's going to have to take the handbrake off a bit here, Scott Parker, because they cannot afford to keep drawing blanks. I'm going to go for 2-0, but I'm not confident about it. As we move on to Saturday lunchtime and another one of those sides in a top 3 battle. In fact, they're both early kickoffs this Saturday. It is Leeds United versus Preston North End. Leeds are back on top in the table thanks to a 1-0 win at Borough. And all I can say is thank God they held on for that scoreline, because the officials would have taken so much stick if Middlesbrough had found an equaliser, which they could have late on. They created a couple of chances. Leeds didn't have many opportunities, but the ones they did were good chances. And they should have had more than 1 goal. The officials had a bit of a mare in that one, to be honest. Dan James popping up with a crucial early goal again. He's become so important to that Leeds United team. And overall, Leeds United producing a performance which gets them back to the top of the table, takes away some of that panic. And Carl Darlow keeping a clean sheet at the back had another solid game as well. So, good news for Leeds United. And it is still an unbeaten run of 5, despite the 3 draws in the middle. For Preston, though, it is now 4 without a win in all competitions. and frustration late on against Cardiff City. 94th minute equaliser cost me another point, but more importantly, it cost Preston 3. They had a pretty even game, to be honest. I don't think we can complain at the scoreline from either team's point of view, but when you're ahead going into stoppage time, we saw a lot of key late goals in midweek, and that was one of them, which will be frustrating for Preston, but ultimately, they've got nothing to play for. They're 7 clear of the relegation zone. They should be absolutely fine, but that would have just made it comfortable above the 50-point mark, kept Cardiff a point lower as well. So it'll be a bit frustrated Heckingbottom, but they've just got to get through to the summer. They've got a depleted squad. They need to make big changes going forward, and I think that there will then be a better side next year. But for now, Leeds United will comprehensively win this for me. Preston, in their last 6 games in all competitions, no clean sheet, letting in goals against bottom half side against a very good Leeds attack. I think they'll try and sit in, but they'll get beaten comfortably by 3-0. And the final early kickoff features another side in that top 3 race. It is Sheffield United off back-to-back defeats, travelling to Plymouth Argyle. Any hope that Plymouth had from that weekend win against Norwich probably dissipated with a 3-0 defeat, a comfortable one to Swansea City. Was an awful first half display. It was a game that arguably could have been more than 3-0. They were completely outclassed from start to finish. And I'm afraid that's probably the end for Plymouth Argyle because they just cannot win games away from home. At home to Sheffield United, who will be seething after 2 1-0 defeats in a row against Oxford and Millwall. A frustrating day at home for them in midweek. They were absolutely dominant. They had 5 times the shot, didn't create as many on target as they like, but they did have a couple of good opportunities and should have certainly got something out of the match. There's going to be those sorts of days towards the end of the season, though. We saw it last year for all of the 4 who were battling at the top. I don't think Plymouth's defence is good enough, though. I know at home they've been a slightly different side, but when they open up, Sheffield United still haven't got that porous defence that others have got. They've only let in 4 in their last 6 matches. Yes, the problem has been in front of goal the last couple, but Plymouth are going to give you opportunities. So I'm going to go for Sheffield United to get back into winning form here. I actually think all of the top 3 win this weekend. I don't think Sheffield United will be as convincing. I'm going to go for them to win at Plymouth after a scare by 2-1 at Home Park. As we move on to the 3 p.m. kickoffs, and with the battle at the top out the way, we can focus on relegation now because this game is huge. 22nd v 20th, 2 points separating them. It is Cardiff City v Stoke City, and both teams have become draw specialists in recent weeks. In Stoke's case, 2-1 draws, including a late goal conceded against Luton Town. It was a very tough day for them. Lewis Baker's the only man scoring at the minute, a Luton boy ironically, but Milanic Ali popping up with that late equaliser in what was a pretty poor game. I did watch this one, of course. No real clear-cut chances for either side. Luton maybe looks a threat on the counter, but Stoke City, they looked like they were going to hold on. And it's been a story since Mark Robins came in, to be honest. They've conceded so many late goals. While they're not conceding as many overall, only 4 in the last 5 matches, some of those are coming at crucial times late in the game. You had the 94th minute against Millwall from the penalty spot, that one in stoppage time against Luton, and then the one against Coventry even prior to that in the 97th minute. That's 3 times in the last 6 matches that they've lost points in stoppage time. You cannot afford that at the bottom. For Cardiff, very much the opposite story. 3 draws in a row and a very late goal at Preston was able to get them a point. Probably deserved it on the balance of play. It was a pretty even match. And again, after conceding goals from 1-0 up against Sheffield Wednesday and conceding late on against Luton as well, it does soften the blow a little bit for them and keep them in the mix. But the problem for Cardiff again is largely defensively. They've not been the best at home in recent weeks either. So this is going to be another really hard one to call. I mean, based on their recent results, someone could win it, but I would be a fool not to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. It is the most likely outcome in this match, and while someone might go and nick it 1-0, I have to go for a 1-1 draw. And then we move on to a very big game that I will be keeping a close eye on. It is Luton Town versus Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn stopped the rot against Sheffield Wednesday with a comeback from 2-0 down in the second half. A spirited and a good second half performance, but overall still not enough really to calm the Blackburn faithful. They are now out of the playoff race 9 points away and are still the most out of form team in the Championship at the minute. For Luton, the unbeaten run continues with a late draw against Stoke City, but it's not really enough, is it? Because they're 2 points behind Cardiff and Derby, 4 points behind the rest. and that means they're going to have to gain 2 results on teams. They've only got Derby left of those bottom sides. They have got to win this game. Given that the other 3 games remaining for them are against the teams in 5th, 6th and 8th battling for the playoffs, this game becomes absolutely essential. Elijah Adebayo's out for the season, Jacob Brown's out for the season. They're now running out of firepower up front. Carlton Morris arguably lucky to stay on the pitch on Tuesday night. And we don't see Luton scoring many goals. They're going to have to hope for a miracle here. Blackburn's defence has been rotten in recent weeks and they've offered next to no goal threat. So maybe Luton can be aggressive. I'm really not sure. I'm going with heart over head on this one. I'm going for a 2-1 Luton win because if they don't win this weekend, I think ultimately they're probably down. As we move back into the playoff race for the next one, it is a big game between Millwall and Middlesbrough. Both sides in touching distance of the playoffs, 5 and 2 points respectively. Millwall picked up big back-to-back wins this week, 2-1 against Pompey and then 1-0, the ultimate smash and grab against Sheffield United. They were battered for the most part of the game, but they stood up strong defensively, and Millwall's defensive record is always good at this level. We mentioned it, if Alex Neil can add a goal threat to that side next year, if he can bring in 2 or 3 exciting attacking players, Millwall are going to be one hell of a team. Obviously, the bad news for them is that their match winner from midweek will not be eligible to play against his parent club, as Middlesbrough lost 1-0 at home to Leeds. As I mentioned earlier on, they didn't actually play that badly overall and had some late chances, but the game should have been out of sight. It was poor offside calls that ultimately kept them in it. And after a good run, they've got that difficult fixture out the way. This one is not a great one to follow up with though. Millwall are always a tough side to beat at home. They grind out results. They keep the pressure on. And Borough, they often struggle to break down those deep defences. Millwall will not be giving them space in behind. They won't be allowing them to counter. And then it's whether Borough step up to the set pieces, which they haven't always done this season. I think this game goes 1-0 either way. I can't decide for the life of me which way it's going to go. I'm going to go for Borough. I think a lot of people will go for 1-0 Millwall. I'm going to go for Borough to nick it by the odd goal on the road. Let's move into the second half and we're back to a huge game at the bottom. 2 sides separated by 4 places and 3 points. It is Portsmouth versus Derby County. John Eustace's side got a very good handy draw at home to Burnley in midweek. Again, just sat back, restricted Burnley, and it worked a treat. They probably had the best chance of the game and could have arguably nicked it, but a very good point for them. Keeps them outside the relegation zone. But now with these games coming up, they've got Pompey away. They've got obviously Luton at home soon as well. These are absolutely huge for Derby County. I still think they stay up pretty comfortably, but the drying up of goals in the last 2 games will be a bit of a concern. How are they going to set up away at Portsmouth? Are they going to go for it as they did at Plymouth? Or are they going to wait for their home fixtures and just try and set up sturdy on the road? Because that, to be fair, is where they've struggled most of the season. They've not been able to pick up many points away from home. Portsmouth, though, after looking like they were safe, only 1 win in their last 5. Losing to teams in and around them like Plymouth as well has not helped the situation. But at home, they've picked up those crucial 1-0 wins. And they've been able to grind out results. And against a Derby side that doesn't offer a lot going forward, I wonder if the same could happen here. There's part of me that wants to go completely against the grain here, and rather than a 1-0, just go for a bonkers score. I think that this could be 2 teams targeting the game and the fixture as a chance to pick up points. If Portsmouth score first, Derby will have to come out. I'm going for goals. Screw it. We're going to have a match week where there's goals eventually. 3-1 Portsmouth. No explanation. It's got 1-0 written all over it, but I'm going to go for 3-1. As we move back to the playoff race and a side who are starting to scare me now, it is Bristol City who travel to QPR. What a win in a week that was for Queen's Park Rangers. A massive result at Oxford United. A huge win for them to take them to 49 points and pretty much safety now. They got that 3rd goal late on just as the pressure was coming as well. And while they didn't make it easy for themselves, they can now look to the summer. They created the best chances of the game, particularly on the counter. And they can now look at trying to build a squad with some, well, firepower up front would be key, but also rebuild their defence when they're likely going to lose Ronnie Edwards after his loan, and a couple of others are maybe just going over the hill. On the flip side of that, Bristol City, they're becoming consistent. And as I mentioned in a couple of the comments midweek, they've gone full circle. Bristol City were always the shoo-in in these predictions to concede crucial late goals, which eventually drifted them down to mid-table. Now it's gone the other way. A huge late winner against 10-man West Brom. Ruined my perfect score, took most of you above me. But for Bristol City in that playoff race, it is a massive outcome. They're becoming a very tough side to beat, which is an incredibly hard thing to do. It was an even game. A draw probably would have been a fair result, but Bristol City found a way to win, and their versatility and the way they've adapted in games under Liam Manning this year is something I didn't think he or they would be capable of. So I think they have to take massive credit. For this game, I think QPR will relax a bit now they're safe again. They picked up 4 points in the last week. They have played better, to be fair to them, but Bristol City are a very strong side. I know they've picked up all of their 3 wins at home. They lost at Burnley narrowly. They drew at Sheffield United. We've not seen them on the road against a poorer side for a while. And with QPR lacking that firepower overall and letting in a lot of goals in recent weeks, I'm going to go for Bristol City to edge this one. I think it'll be a decent game again. I'm going to go for the visitors by 2-1. Let's move on to another game in that relegation battle as Sheffield Wednesday host a battle in Oxford United. Oxford beaten at home by QPR in a big game in midweek, had the chance to go above them and get themselves away from danger. Instead now, the gap is just 3 points to Cardiff and 5 to Luton Town. And going away to a Sheffield Wednesday side who are out of form but a good team is probably not going to be good news for them here because they have been pretty woeful on the road all season. They're conceding goals on the road as well, 2 at Borough and Hull City. And while they've been solid at home, that midweek performance is really going to cost them. Gave up chances on the counter, struggled to deal with QPR on the break. And QPR don't score 3 against many, it must be said. For Sheffield Wednesday, a 2-goal lead blown against Blackburn, their final chance of getting in the playoffs gone. However, a good season from Danny Roll's side, and the only problem now is Danny Roll looks set to be leaving the club, and they've not been paying their players. So, looks like the owner shot himself in the foot again, just as Sheffield Wednesday were starting to progress. Of that top half, they've got the worst defensive record, which will give Oxford an opportunity here. I just don't think they're strong enough on the road to get a result. Unless Sheffield Wednesday really don't turn up, I think the home side will get the win here. Not going to go for anything too spectacular, but 2-1 for the home side. And then we move on to 2 sides that have got absolutely nothing to play for, really. It is Sunderland versus Swansea City. Sunderland looking ahead to the playoffs. They're pretty much a shoo-in for 4th place and nowhere else. And Swansea City now on 51 points after 2 huge home wins this week. A home and dry in the battle for relegation because Alan Sheehan has done a very good job in interim management there. After that sketchy win against Derby late on, a very big one against Plymouth Argyle. 3-0 up at half-time, game over, dominated the ball, the chances, they were brilliant. Yes, against very poor opposition, but it was a game they had to turn up and win. And they did it in style. So big props to Alan Sheehan there. Swansea can now look ahead to the summer. I've mentioned it before, if I were them, I'd give him the job, but we'll wait and see what happens. For Sunderland, 3 clean sheets in a row, a point at Norwich in midweek after 2 1-0 wins. They've just about stemmed the tide after a little poor run, and defensively, they're looking pretty good. It wasn't the greatest of games, albeit there were a couple of good chances in it. And in the end, I think they'll be happy with a point. But the main thing for Sunderland, can you get through to the season without picking up silly injuries or suspensions? And can you keep yourself in enough form that when the playoffs come around, you've got an opportunity? And in this game, I think they'll do enough to do that. Swansea have struggled when they've played the top sides in a division, struggled at Watford, didn't stay in the game at home to Burnley, and only got a point of Leeds due to Meslier. I'm going to go for Sunderland to nick it with another clean sheet in an ugly game by 1-0. And the final game on Saturday is another big one in that race for the playoffs. 2 sides just about still in it in West Bromwich Albion and Watford. It's been a horror week for West Brom. Now 5 without a win in a championship. And the last 3 games, all against sides in and around that mix as well. Bristol City, Sunderland and Norwich have all gone against them. And the one in midweek, I was so close to the perfect score in a game that they arguably could have nicked at the other end. But a draw would have been a fair result. A late red card from Malumbi, then the late goal to concede the winner as well. It's such a tough week for them. Really not ideal. And coming up against the Watford side who have got themselves back in the race with a 1-0 win against Hull City. Musa Sissoko, a player I'm so impressed with. They weren't good in that game, Watford. They were second best for the most part. But Musa Sissoko is a really good leader. They're still grinding out results. And overall, Tom Cleverley's done a good job this year. No idea what to go for here. Watford have been really poor on the road this year. West Brom have been poor in front of goal just generally the last 5 matches. Only scored 3 in that time. I want to go for 1-0 to West Brom, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline again. 1 goal apiece at the Hawthorns, and if I'm right, it's a result that probably helps neither. As we move on to the final game on Monday Night Football, and it is one that is big at both ends of the table. Relegation battle in Hull City against 6th place playoff contenders Coventry City. And it's a story of 1-0s in midweek. Coventry with that very late win against Portsmouth, a 94th minute winner in a game where they weren't great for the most part, but created late pressure and late chances, and eventually it told. And Hull City, well, a 1-0 defeat at Watford in a game where they did create chances on the break. They did play pretty decently, created more than they do normally, but didn't take them. And unfortunately, they're now just 2 clear of the relegation zone and 4 clear of Luton in 23rd. So it's going to be a very big game, this one. Both sides need the result for different reasons. Coventry, if I'm right about the Middlesbrough score at the weekend, will know that they're still in 6th place, but need a win to cement it. Do they do so? Because they've been picking up goals in most matches. But they had that weird game away at Derby, didn't they? Where they were the better side and didn't take their chances. I do trust them generally to pick up results, but on the road, they've had a couple of stinkers. For Hull City, home form and creating chances at home has generally been the problem. They were awful in that Luton game and then gifted a goal. They just don't look a threat. The amount they've regressed since Liam Rossini left is frightening. And in this game, I think Coventry will have too much for them. Hull will be a threat from set pieces, but how often are they going to get into that attacking third? Coventry have been one of the best sides in the Championship the last few months. And while they did have that bad result at Derby, their only other ones have been against 2 of the top 3. So I'm going to go for Coventry to stay consistent against most of the bottom half and nick a late Monday night win by 2-0 at Hull City. We'll go for the old Charlie Bet special from a few years ago with a late second on the counter when Hull chase an equaliser. So 2-0 Coventry to finish off. So with that out the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for this weekend. And despite the fact everything is suggesting otherwise, I'm going for goals. 3 at home for Portsmouth and for Leeds United. Both huge games for them in their respective battles. I've gone for all of the top 3 to win. And I've gone for heart overhead at the bottom with Luton Town to gain ground on Cardiff, on Stoke and on Hull with a 2-1 win against Blackburn Rovers. Those are just my predictions for match week 42. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Give us your score predictions. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out next midweek when we look ahead to match week 43, returning for the Good Friday edition. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it, subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with everything. And I'll see you again here at the middle of next week as we look ahead to a huge double header over the Easter weekend in the EFL Championship. It's going to be decisive at both ends of the table, but fingers crossed, Luton Town will come out on the right side of it.